You're now listening to Primarily Married, Episode 2.
I'm here with Jasnique. My name is Ari. Welcome to those who are returning, and welcome to those who are just checking us out for the first time. If you don't know, this is a limited series podcast about us just kind of sharing our experiences and perspectives around marriage from our personal experience, but also from the larger landscape, right? Of like general relationships and things we see online and when it's within our peers. Today we are going to be hopping into um, not a trendy topic, but one that kind of sparked my interest because I feel like Jasnique and I have had similar experiences around it. But yeah, let's hop into it. How are you doing?
I am doing well. How are you, love?
I'm doing well too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anything new in your life?
Besides running around? No. Same old.
Okay, let's see. What is there anything new in my life? Still podcasting. Which is super obvious because we're podcasting right now. Yeah, I mean, life is pretty good right now. I feel much more focused around like my health.
That's good.
And things that I want in life. And how I spend my time.
Nice.
Which has been really nice.
That intentionality.
Yeah. And having like the space and grace to like explore.
That's awesome. Yeah. I guess when I sit and think about like life and what's happening, I think I tend to be intentional about most of the things I do because it's out of necessity.
Okay.
So oftentimes I just kind of call it like running around, like I'm busy, I'm doing, because I'm busy living life, like with all the things that I have happening. But with that being said, I do try. I've noticed a lot of growth within myself, as far as like managing the time I do have. So you just kind of like sparked that in me when you said that. I was like, yeah, there's some intentionality happening. It's not just behind all the running around, right?
Are you in your winter arc?
Elaborate.
So I don't know how long this term has been around, maybe a few years, but people call the winter arc. It starts in October and it goes throughout like spring, but people usually start in October. And it's when like you get your life together, like you get on like this like I don't want to say restrictive because some people aren't restrictive about it, but they get onto a regimen where they're like in the gym, they're eating right, they're like just focused, like not worrying about anything else but like just being fit and healthy, and they call it like a winter arc season.
Just before January hits.
Yeah, so sometimes
Okay.
people go into spring, but it's mostly like October through December when they're just like going hard, and they call it a winter arc. Even though I was like, October is fall, it's not winter, but whatever. And so I've been seeing a lot of that online of people like, this is my winter arc, and they like tell you like their schedule or like what their goals are. I've seen a lot of women like, this is my winter arc with Christ, like make sure you keep Christ at the center of all this. So it's been really interesting to see that play out online. Like I've heard of it like amongst friends. Like I have friends who they never use the term winter arc, but they do go into like a mode around this time. But this is my first time seeing it like on social media be played out in such a vast way, like so many people doing it. So it's been interesting kind of just seeing like people's different approaches to it.
That's really interesting. I'm just kind of chuckling because I'm just like, I have not seen that. Wait, but I'm also, it's always funny. And when I think about like doing this with you, I'm like, girl, I'm Patrick from SpongeBob SquarePants. Like, what? Like, I don't even understand. But I digress. I'm like, no, I've never heard of it.
So are you think you're what's your arc?
Nah, I'm just living my life. I'm like, I try not to set like New Year like resolutions and goals and things like New Year resolutions. Like I try to be better today than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's just how I live my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So recently I started watching a show with Tia Mowry. She decided to come out with a reality show about her life and her experience after divorce. And it's been some controversy around it for two reasons. One is that they feel like she's not being authentic and not vulnerable and transparent enough, because she claims the show is supposed to be super transparent and like give the tea and kind of address the rumors, but she hasn't really addressed any of the rumors or really like fully explained or like killed any of the like story or tabloids and stuff like that, right? That she presented on the show from her personal experience was around her marriage, of course, because she's talking about her divorce. And she talks about how she never experienced dating because she wasn't allowed to date till she was 18. She met her husband when she was 20, and he was her first boyfriend, her first everything. Of course, they were married for 20 plus years. So now that she's divorced, she really doesn't know how to navigate dating. She doesn't know what she wants, really. She's still trying to determine what her actual needs are in a relationship. So she feels like she's kind of like a teen girl trying to figure out what this all is now, because she was only with one man her whole life. She spoke about how, like, for a long time she was unhappy in the marriage, but they were putting up a really good front for the, public, because they're, public figures. So, like, they looked happy on the red carpet, but at home they really weren't. And she pretty much says that towards the last few years of their marriage, they just grew apart for various reasons. We don't know those reasons because the show isn't as unfiltered as she claimed it was going to be. So, from hearing that experience of, like, just those basic little bullet points, can you resonate with this? Is there any parts that you feel like you personally experience or you can kind of understand from her experience?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I wasn't allowed to date growing up. I've only been the person I married was the first guy for all the things that that I've ever been with, right? And yeah, I can totally resonate with her in wanting to like did she mention that she feels like a teenage girl, or just like trying to like,
she kind of like hinted at it,
like it's just new, like
it's just very new, and she just feels like and the dating landscape is very different than the 90s when she was in that age.
Yeah.
So that's just like an added like barrier to like process and navigate to.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't resonate with her with the dating scene because, I just because
we're not dating right now.
Just, but as far as being able to resonate with, how she grew, well, not necessarily how she grew up, but like not being allowed to date and only being one guy, I could feel that I feel her on that one. And then the growing apart, not necessarily being happy, like, yeah, like I can see those things. And then at the afterwards, right, where she's like almost in a sense of like rediscovering herself now and this version of her, I can totally, I can empathize with that.
Yeah.
Just trying to discover self all over again with, 2 kids is, it's there's a lot of nuances. So I can resonate with her.
I think for myself, I resonate because I wasn't allowed to date either. And the weird thing about my situation was that rule wasn't put in place by my parents. It was put in place by my sister. That's how much authority she had over me when I was a child. Yes.
Wow.
So it's just so weird thinking back as an adult. I was like, I probably could have dated. Like, what would she for real would have done if she found out I was dating? But in that time, like, I respected that rule.
What's your age gap?
7 years. Almost 8 years.
Wow, you were...
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? One thing that, one thing that I wish that, like, parents can take into consideration, or, like, just caregivers in general, is, like, that individual child in a sense, because of what I'm hearing, what I'm hearing you say in so many ways, and like, and just kind of like knowing you similarly to me, like, if my parents told me to jump, I'll say how high. If my parents told, like, whatever was put in front of me to do, right, then I'll do it. So and then it became like, so, and with that thought process in mind and knowing the type of like kid I was, right, there had to be something else that was you get what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how to explain it, but because it sounds like, I'm curious, like, did you have like a very close relationship with your sister where you were able to come to her and talk to her about certain things, considering she placed that role in there? Or
me and my sister had a very like not pure sibling relationship for a long time.
Okay.
Like, she was just seen as another parent, and that was partially because of the way my mom treated her and the expectations my mom put on her, especially regarding me. So I think that was developed from poorly. I don't agree with that, but that was my mom. I feel like set the foundation. And so because my sister graduated from high school when I went into junior high school. So I was in 5th grade. She was in 12th grade.
Okay.
So when she graduated, I went to 6th grade into junior high. So she was already an adult, well into adulthood by the time I got to high school. She was 21-ish, where she's already done she dated in high school herself. She dated in high school. She dated throughout her college years. She dated all that time. So I think from her perspective of like, one, she already had to get on like this caregiver parental role in my life, on top of her having her own dating experiences. I think she was doing that out of protection, of course. But looking back, I'm like, why did I? But at the same time, I most likely had that similar perspective of like, oh, this is an authority figure, and I should respect like her wisdom and like stay focused on school and you know, all the things. So even though I wasn't allowed to date, like I said, that rule was not placed by my parents. My parents, I don't think they even cared for real, but I really respected like my sister to the point where I'm just like, okay, she said I shouldn't date, you know. At that time, of course, I had crushes, right? Quote unquote. I liked people, but it was just like, oh. But I still also didn't care that much. At that point in high school, I was having fun doing all the other things, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Wow.
But yeah, so I didn't date until I was like 3 weeks before I was 19.
Wow.
And it was horrible. I didn't know anything. I got involved with the wrong people.
Released to the wolves.
Yes,
Girl.
I was released to the wolves. I had horrible experiences. Just horrible experiences. So I can resonate with that. The only difference is like I didn't marry the first person I was with. Right?
Won't you do it?
But I still feel like I didn't get like the full dating experience. I just feel like this is another topic, but this maybe a different episode. But it was just so many other factors that still made me feel like I missed out on certain things. And certain experiences when it comes to dating, you know. And some of the experiences I feel like are childish.
Okay.
So now I feel like if I were to approach dating like that, the person would be like, girl, grow up.
Interesting.
Or maybe I'll find another like young-hearted person to be with in the future. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, I really resonated with that part. I resonated with the part of like being unhappy in a marriage and not necessarily growing apart, but realizing like we never had a strong foundation to begin with. Like we never had like a fully developed friendship to begin with, which I feel like should be part of the foundation of any relationship, especially a marriage. And we fully never agreed in general around like spirituality, worldview, lifestyle. Like I was just like, why? How did we get here? Like we're so different. So I can see what she meant by like grew apart, because from my understanding, even though she didn't share many details, my understanding of what she was trying to say is that she went into this as a 20-year-old At 20 years old, we don't really know much about ourselves.
Mm-mm.
And as humans, especially women, we go through transitions throughout life in general where we're growing and, like you said, rediscovering ourselves and all the things. So to do that within a marriage, yes, it happens in every marriage, right? But to do that so young and also not have any, and that person also doing that and like not having any guidance or any, all the things, of course, can lead to divorce. And so when she was saying growing apart, I feel like they just never grew together.
I could agree with that. Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Do you think that your experience, or even, for instance, I mean, even like, from what we're talking about, right, with Tia, right? Do you think your experience would have been different had you dated?
I think it would have been different if I dated from a whole place, because I dated from insecurity my whole life.
Got it.
And so I feel like if I would have had like the self-esteem and like understanding of my self-worth and really saw who I actually was, I would have made better choices with who I decided to have those experiences with.
Respect it. And I agree. And now I'm asking you this, I'm also asking you this as a mother, because I'm raising kids, right? Yeah. And so because here's the thing, the first time I started dating, I went to college when I was 17. And that's pretty much when I finished high school at like 17, went to college when I was 17, all in that same year. I was with the same person in high school that I was with in college, and ended up marrying that person as well, right? When I was in high school, and like my friends, right, different peers and things like that who were dating, I always felt, because I felt like I was left out because they were all dating. And so I wasn't dating. And so I felt as though, I almost felt like, okay, maybe there's something wrong with me. Like that's where those things came up. Now, hindsight 2020, like years later, I realized I was fine. Like I was completely fine. I don't know why I thought that, because, everybody was dating and that was just something that folks were doing that I was missing out. And so I say all that to say that, do you feel like all that self-esteem and all that different insight and wisdom would have came as a kid? Because I'm still a believer that you need to learn yourself, and I don't think you do that in high school. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily like you don't. Like, I feel like dating is for like 25 and 30-year-olds. Yeah. Like, I don't think. Like, I don't know. I don't. That's just where I'm at. I don't know.
To answer that specific question, no. Like high school, I don't expect that.
Oh, so you were spared. I feel like you're spared dating in high school and stuff. Like, I just I don't even think it was like I'm glad that it was only like my senior year in high school that I was like dating. Like, had I been dating in freshman, sophomore, like, girl,
I had enough distractions already. So I wouldn't say that I expect that from me as a child. But 20 to 25.
Now we're talking. Frontal lobe is almost developed, right?
Yeah, I made a lot of horrible and poor decisions during that time around the opposite sex and dating is what I guess is what you want to call it. I still don't call it dating, but it was just wilding out. And so I feel like that was just could have been something I experienced throughout childhood, or even maybe having that feeling of being left out in high school and like trying to make up for it, or like it could have all that could have played into that period of my life. But yeah, I don't think I still how do I say this? Overall, I don't expect that wisdom to be present.
Curated.
Yeah, and curated
as a teenager.
Yeah, as a teenager.
I mean, and there's outliers for sure, right? Yeah. There's definitely the high school sweethearts that go on and get married, yada, 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 right? And live happily ever after. I like in so many ways, like the whole not allowed to date. Thanks, parents. I appreciated that. Like, I just wish they had more conversations with me or surrounding the reasonings and rationale behind that.
I think for sure, I know for sure I agree with you that conversations should have been had. I wish there was more access to our culture, our historical culture around, what's it called? Like when they have like different ones, like this is like a debutante ball and
Jack and
Jill, and there's another one.
Our culture.
Well, the culture that
I get it.
We've embraced.
Yeah.
Things like that where I feel like that plays a role too. Cause
Tyrone and Tynesha, like I don't know, like
it's another one that we have. What was it called? But it's usually done at the high school. But yeah. Anyways,
a Black Laureate.
No, I think it starts with like a C. I can't remember. But they're all similar where they're teaching you like etiquette, they're teaching you how to like dance, and they're teaching you like how to present yourself and things like that. I feel like that plays a role, and also it kind of humanizes being around the opposite sex in a way. And I feel like that, because I know some of them, they even talk about like hygiene and like sexual, health and things like that. So I feel like if that was implemented out in those spaces outside of school, because school is very like, I don't know, maybe they're better with it, but when it came to sexual health, it was just like very much, you get your period, and then you have hormones, and and then some classes they did talk about the different changes and stuff, but it was just like very like textbook, and not so much like
street.
Yes. And so I feel like we need more of those spaces like that where like it's outside of school, it's a different environment, and all these other skills are also being developed. So I feel like that would have helped a lot with like, you're not allowed to date, but at least you know something about the opposite sex. You know a little bit more about you as well, and have those conversations about like what a relationship is, what a crush is, how do you know if you like someone, how do you know if you want to even date or be involved or commit to someone or commit to this. So I definitely agree with just those conversations were not had with me either.
Yeah.
Even from the person who, well, she was young herself, my sister, but even from the person who told me like, no, you can't date. Like, it wasn't like she told me like why. She was just like, stay focused on school. And so and so it's just like,
education your boyfriend, that pencil on paper.
Right.
Wow, we out here with PhDs and
don't know nothing about relationships. Yeah, so yeah, I resonate with all of that. And so, like you said, you coming from a place of empathy for Tia. Like, I appreciated her telling that side of her experience, even though it wasn't like what people quote unquote expected. But also it's because of my own personal experience, and others who may be watching may not have a similar or like aligned experience too.
Whole concept of folks being a little disappointed that like it's not raw and all these things, like you have to there's a way in which you have to curate your story without like and we had this conversation before, so it's like how like she's telling as much as she can probably tell, and I'm not a public figure, but like being that she's a public figure, and then she also, it's another person's life that she was attached. So it's like she can't just be like, here's what happened, you know what, you want the tea and da 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 da, and he was like, and that's not how that works. Yeah. Right. So
that's how they feel. They never acknowledge Corey, which I feel like it's a good point. It's just like this isn't only her experience or her story. Right. But they did address the part around her thinking of herself as a public figure and like trying to save face. They're like, we're tired of you save face. We want to see like your humanity.
People.
And I'm just like, you want a lot from these people. Are you gonna do that? Like, so yeah, that was part of the argument too. It's just like, we're tired of you like trying to keep up this image. Like, just just like let it all out.
Oh
and
my
was
gosh! And then be talking about her, how like just talking about all sites, all sorts.
I was like,
of
anything
like,
she does,
it ain't gonna matter.
Be upset.
Exactly.
You already done turned on her and said you're only rocking with Tamara now. Like, there's so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been interesting, but it did, like I said, spark this conversation I want to have with you.
Knowing yourself and learning yourself, right? We talked about how would you be able to conceptualize all that in high school? Not necessarily, right? And then from a Christian perspective, right? What I'm learning in life, right, is that you have to be like this with God, right? So that you love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. Then you love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? And if you do it in that order, then at least it's laid out for you. You know what I mean? Because when you do it like that, and I'm speaking from the version that I'm at, from this version, not that version, right? But there's a lot to it, and then like that growing apart. And you did say it. You mentioned how like you probably weren't ever together in the first place, right? And of course you get that when you just out here
after the perspective comes after all the things.
Exactly.
The hindsight,
right? But you said it. You did, because and then it's like when you're young that's you're not even on that. You're not thinking about that.
Yeah, and another thing with marriage, like I said, it can happen at any age because like we're constantly evolving humans. But it's just like you have to have some type of foundation and a foundation to commit to in order to stick through those different changes that happen with your partner. Like you're constantly going to be relearning yourself and relearning your partner and relearning what your marriage is. And I don't think people understand that. They expect someone to be the same forever.
And that's two different people.
Yes.
Which marriage is not, it's not for play. Like it's definitely for like adults, and not saying adults like as though like the outliers of the young folks that are able to like go from this country, right? Or you get what I'm saying? Like from our landscape, right?
Our culture.
Right, exactly. It's not to say that they can't, right? But it's for the mature, right? It's definitely. I don't think we can stress that enough.
Some people get into marriage.
It's for the mature.
Like, this is going to be the same person from the day we got married, the same person where we had our kids. They gonna be the same. We gonna do the same routine for the next 50 years. And just like
no, you're constantly changing, and that person is constantly changing. So you have to and
then bring parenthood into this. That's even like that's so many changes that come with parenthood. So I think, like you said, it's for mature people who have a realistic understanding of what goes into marriage and the commitment of marriage.
For sure. Just wanted to.
Before we move forward in the conversation, I just want to stop and pause and thank all of you who've gotten this far in the episode. I hope you enjoyed our conversation so far. Be sure to like it, share it, comment, rate us. We appreciate all your support and would love to know if any of this has resonated with you. Now that you have given us a like and a rating and maybe even a comment, let's hop back into the conversation.
I recently watched or listened to this podcast called Gin and Juice with Mel and Melissa, and Melody Gooseby had a stance or like a perspective around divorce and around like people announcing their divorce or just like telling their relatives, friends, whatever, that hey, I'm getting a divorce. She believes that at that point, there shouldn't be as much questioning about if someone's ready for a divorce or not. Because she was saying that usually the first response is, are you sure? Have you thought about it? Have you considered? Did you do all the things like counseling, therapy, workshops, the different tools? Have you read the book? Have you did the devotionals? All the things. And she felt like that shouldn't be people's first response. The first response would be, of course, to hold space. And then maybe if there is concern, I guess, in a sense, respect it in that moment and like maybe that just not be the first response in the moment. So I want to ask you first, what do you think respect looks like in that moment? If it's not that, right, that first response of concern, what would respect look like in that moment outside of asking those questions?
So like when it comes to holding space, I think that's always the first thing that you should do. Yeah, regardless, it's just the holding the space, right? Because obviously, if they're coming to you, like we talked about earlier, you know, we're gonna be loud about the marriage, like, oh girl, I'm getting married, oh boy, you know, we get married, but the divorce probably not so much. And so with that, they're probably gonna have reached out to very few selective people to even express that to. And so really it comes down to like your relationship with that person too, right? So yeah, from a relationship standpoint, if I know this person, right, and they're coming to me, then it's more so holding the space, and then I mean, to be honest, like I kind of like I disagree in the sense where she's coming from. I would ask those questions, like you know, did you think and probably again, and I think it's how you approach the situation, like hold the space first, however long that's going to be, and depending on the response that you get, then you can feel your way around the whole situation.
Yeah, which questions to ask.
Yeah, it's more so, but I mean, like, I don't know if that was her thought process when she expressed this.
From what I perceived, her thought process was let people make the decision. Like they've obviously, so her overarching thing was if they've gotten to a point to make the decision to consider divorce or make the decision to actually follow through with a divorce, they've already processed for themselves, and they already had that thought for a while. Like they have been thinking about it for a while before they came to this conclusion. So we shouldn't assume that they don't know what they're doing if they've thought about this for a while, or maybe they have like attempted to work on their marriage for a while without, you know, us being aware of like behind the scenes of what's going on. So she was just like, if someone gets to that point, they pretty much already thought it through. And so like don't allow that to be like your first response of asking them, are they sure?
Then that's her response. Like for me, at the end of the day, like I'm not going to tell a whole bunch of people anyway, right? Yeah. I'm only going to come to like my closest friends, and they already know what it is anyway, right? And so with that being said, if they were to ask me, you know, just to check in and be like, yo, like, is this what you want to do? I would respectfully be like, yeah, like I processed it, and I don't think I would get agitated about it. Yeah. I would, in a sense, sometimes, you know, sometimes folks like myself would probably appreciate that little flag of like that little like, sis, you don't have to do it if that's, you get what I'm saying? So I'd appreciate that. And that's me, right? So there's that. Like I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind people coming to me with that. Okay, because again, I'm only telling like a selective people anyways who already knows.
My experience is different because like I shared with you earlier, there was only like 3 people that I kind of gave them the full picture about what I had been experiencing in my marriage. And so when I got to that point, they're like, we get it, we understand, we're here to support you throughout, you know, your next steps or whatever. But the larger majority was like elders, like my parents, you know, aunts, uncles, older cousins, stuff like that. They're just like, are you sure? You know, like marriage, you know, like we talked about already, like marriage takes work, and we've all been there. There was one couple, I'm trying not to blame my decisions on them, but they had a strong influence over me getting married or making that decision to get married. So they were one of the couples we turned to when we were kind of talking about divorce. So they're supposed to be like our spiritual guides or whatever, like our mentors, right? And their examples they were using was around chores. And I was like, yes, chores are going to be a difficult thing in most households. Like there's always going to be someone doing more, like slacking, right? Like I'm just like, I understand that. That's going to be probably an ongoing stressor for any household, whatever. I was like, I ain't talking about chores. And I tried to tell them more, and they just wasn't grasping it. And I was just like, what is happening right now?
Okay.
And so having those conversations with them, and then coming to the point of like actually make a decision, and then being like, are you sure that I didn't want to hear it from them because I had already like went through the things. And then for my parents, well, mainly my mom, I didn't want to hear from her either because at that point I had already filed. I had already like really had made up my mind. And so I was like, I really don't ever want to talk about it. It's like, just don't ask me. This is what I'm doing. Accept what I'm doing. Support me in what I'm doing or don't support me. But like, I just don't feel like answering these questions. So I think for me, it's just like I got to a point where like I had made up my mind. I feel like it was definitely something God confirmed for me to move forward with. And I just didn't want to hear from all of my elders and stuff to be like, are you sure you want to get divorced?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So like on your social medias and stuff, because you're active on social media, right?
Yeah.
Do you have like divorce in there?
No.
Oh, okay. Do you have like married or in relationship?
I never put any of that.
Oh, okay. Just out of curiosity, because I'm just like, as we're sitting here having this conversation.
I think on Facebook I might have had. I don't think I've switched it to marriage, but I did. I don't think I posted it. I think family posted our wedding photos and tagged us, and that's how people found out. But I don't think I ever like changed my status on profiles or anything like that.
Okay. The reason why I was asking you that was because as we were having this conversation, it was an epiphany that kind of dawned on me that I was just like, bruh, most of my family have no idea that I'm even.
Most of my family
like,
don't either.
Only my closest family, like my intermediate family, no. So like, I didn't till this day. Like no one really knows.
Yeah.
So like, hopefully it's like solidified before this goes out off record.
You don't have to share this with.
But you get what I'm saying? Like yeah, I think it just goes back to like, how many people did you share it with in general? Because like my parents had no idea, like at all. Like I did not, because I know how much of an influence they are on me and with me, and not to say that they would have had any rebuttals, but I literally own like when I don't have that many friends anyway. Let's be frank. So like only my closest people do. Like it, like the whole thing. Like I mean, from the beginning to the end. And even then, like when I was like, "Yo, like I moved," they like, "You moved? What?" Like, yeah, called and was like, "This is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is what's happening." She was like, dang, you moving deep in silent, like you moving in silent. Yeah, like just so you know, boom, 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 boom. Dang, and that was that. So, and that was literally like I didn't tell. Parents didn't know. I had to tell. I had a therapist, right?
Yeah.
And with that, she was the one who even said, you need to tell one family member. Legit. She was like, you told your I'm like, yeah, well, like my friends know, right? She's like, oh, you need to tell a family. And I was like, okay. And I picked the one family member who's like just busy. It's so busy that he couldn't even like stop to even like really get too invested. Yeah. So yeah, it goes back to like who you telling.
So the people
that I guess it spreads
first initially were those three people. So one was one of my sisters, and then two of my friends. And then, because those are the three that I already kind of told the full, like, this is how we got here story. Like, this is how I got to this. So they knew all the, like, details. People outside of that was, like, two other friends, which was so funny because we were on a picnic, and we're just, like, it was a beautiful day to sit on the grass hill having a picnic. And we're, like, looking at the cityscape and stuff. We're just talking, and actually, I think it was just me and one of my friends. I don't really think the other friend was there. And she was telling me, she was going through a lot at that time too. So we're kind of opening up about like catching up on stuff. And she had like experienced some loss in her family and all the things. And then she was like, well, what's going on with you? And I told her getting a divorce. And she said,
"Okay, awesome.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's kind of like trickled, like spread it over like a course of like maybe 2 months of me kind of like giving the news to different individuals.
Okay.
But at that time, my mind had already been made up. Mm-hmm. So by the time I got to my mom and like my aunt, who were my mom, my aunt, and my grandmother were the main three that was really pushing against it.
Okay.
It was just like this is what it is.
Got it.
Like I don't want to have these.
Okay.
Like
long, elaborate conversations about did I process?
Yeah. And so I think that's where I was just like, y'all.
Yeah.
We already signed like separation papers. We already talked about when he's moving out. Like it was already. Yeah. And so it was just at that point I was just like, no, I don't want to answer these questions, and I don't care if you think I haven't thought this through. Like, so I think I'm coming from that perspective when I'm listening to like males be like, they thought about this if they got into this point of like telling people like I'm getting divorced, you know.
I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they get back. I was like, hey, that was a wild experience. It's not like literally. Okay, now right. This is kind of off topic, but it's on topic. Those three people, my grandmother, my aunt, my mom, are still the same three people who kind of tiptoe. Like my aunt, she doesn't bring it up, thankfully, in a while. My grandmother, she started sending me like scriptures and memes and stuff around like marriage and like fighting for your marriage and all the things. She hasn't done that in maybe like 9 months, so I'm like, okay, maybe it's sitting in with her. My mom, on the other hand, she literally just had a conversation with me, a month ago. Y'all need to get it together. I was like, Mom, you don't ever know this man.
Okay, I'm starting to. I get what. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I was like, it's been 3 years.
Got it. I've had friends who's been in like similar situations with their families and stuff, kind of just like saying like after years and years doing those things. I don't get it from my family.
I feel like your family had a more direct experience with your mate because they known him since he was a teenager. He's been around for a while. He's been part of the family for a while. Your mom lived with you for a while, so like I feel like they have a different layer of connection and like broader picture. My family didn't meet my ex until me and him were already dating we were dating for like 6 months and we were boyfriend girlfriend at that time for maybe 3 months, and they met him, and so they only saw him for 2 holidays, and then after those 2 holidays they didn't see him again till we got to our wedding. So it's just like they never developed their own relationships with him, so they only knew like what they seen for holidays. So I'm just like, y'all barely had any conversation with him, and y'all barely like seen us interacting like every day since. It's been more just like holidays, family gatherings, and we didn't live in the same town as them, so we didn't see them often. So I'm just like, how attached can you be to this man? You don't know him.
That's a good point. I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm gonna say 2 things from there, because eventually when I started talking to like other women and older and things like that, I would say that sometimes I think it can come from their experiences of being lonely, of being single themselves, right? And so they're almost in a sense like, girl, like I got like they have foresight, right? In the sense of like, you might be young now, but I'm in my however old, and I'm alone, right? And it's not comfortable. And so I'm just out of love, in a sense, their way of like trying to love, right? It's like, I don't know if you're making the right decision. And I think that's could be where that comes from, because I have had that from other women, like older women and stuff. And then what I also want to say, the whole scripture thing, I have seen online with like comments and stuff on YouTube after watching like podcasts and things like that, right? Where people would be like throwing scriptures and stuff. Let me just say, what God brings together, no man can part. I think we doing a whole lot of bringing together on our own terms and not God bringing together. So let's put that right there. That a lot of these relationships aren't God bringing together. It's me.
Exactly.
It's me. I'm doing it. I did not check in with God at all on this. No counsel. This is what I wanted and this is what I did. And I think we have to also take that into consideration.
Yeah. Putting a pin in that, I told my dad, and when I told him, he was sad. He was more sadder than I expected. And I think for him, it was because he knew I was out here by myself. I'm away from family. So when I got with my ex, he was like, oh, like, there's a man there to take care of you, to see after you. And I feel like some of my family had that perspective too, like, oh, you have family there now, because I had his family, you know, everything. So I think that was part of it too, of them just like wanting me to have protection and also extended family to see about me if needed. So I feel like that was played a role too of that perspective. But back to the pin about us getting into a relationship on our own terms and everything, and like not seeking counsel from God. So there was this conversation I had with Woozy recently, because he was saying that, I think he was listening to a podcast, and this woman was talking about how she had one argument. Well, she claimed she had one argument with her husband, and that after the argument, God told her that wasn't her husband. And so
that one argument,
and so he was apprehensive to believe that, because he was just like, I don't think one argument God's gonna tell you just like that's, especially because I forgot what argument it was, but it was something very shallow and petty, and so he was just like, I don't think that was God, right? But then we got to that part of perspective of like what you said, like this probably was never ordained by God to begin with, but she was claiming that it was, and so he was like, I feel like people use God, which we've talked about plenty of times, use God to like as a scapegoat, which he knows that's what we were gonna do. We've done that just at the beginning of time. But yeah, I just like that's interesting that people don't, including myself, don't seek God for true confirmation and everything and clarity, but then always want to play or use his name and claim him in this part of the process or part of the decision. And it's just like,
good point. Now, can I just seeking God for his counsel and wise counsel? Now, let me just correlate that back to sis for a moment, because where I was thinking with Melody was that in a sense of like when folks do say, did you? I know it's a different concept now, because you helped me to realize like, oh, okay, like I can see that. But I think sometimes I think that's part of the reason why sometimes it is like folks do, because we like, let's keep it a band. Like, this is a microwave generation. Like, we're microwave. Like, if we're fast paced. Do we sit down and have intentionality and thoughts and things all the time? Not necessarily, right? And you know, we're learning, right? We're evolving. But that's why, in a sense, when people are like she had one
argument,
right? Like, no, God, like from my thought process and behind that, it's like he's not going to change. Right? Like, God is the one thing. God is consistent, right? Yeah. So, and then it's like, there was some things that was happening prior that you weren't peeping either. Maybe that might have been the revelation that you had in that moment, but some things probably just kind of flew right over you in the beginning, right? Because if that was the case, but that might just be when the revelation occurred to her. So there's that.
Coming back to Melody's perspective around like, don't let that be the first thing you do, or was how the first way you respond to someone telling you they're deciding to get a divorce. Do you think it's more appropriate? Because I know we're coming from a Christian lens to say like, did God?
Our Christian lens.
Our Christian lens.
Individually.
do you feel like the question should be redirected as like, did you, instead of saying, did you think this through? Like, did you see God, or like get confirmation from God on this? Or?
I think that's the biggest one, right? Yeah. Like whenever folks that I know, like in my circle, come to me, I'd be like, did you pray on it? That's for anything and everything, right? But that's the spiritual, like that, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's always holding space and also like, oh, you know, did you pray on that? Oh, okay. Keep praying, you know, like I don't, you know, that's not, but the whole, are you sure? It's always like from that lens, like, is it like, are you, you know, did you pray on it? That's always a big one with everything people come to you about. It should always be, what was your conversation with God? You know, did you seek counsel? That's with anything, right? So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I think I'm glad I brought these topics. I always love hearing your perspective.
So sweet.
And I love that we were able to kind of, because I feel like, me personally, it's easy for me to see others' perspective when it's shared with me, but sometimes it's hard for me to see other perspectives, like just sitting with myself. You know, some people are good at like kind of seeing all the sides just from their own processing. So I'm not that person typically.
Okay.
I need to have conversations with people to enlighten me about these other sides sometimes. And I always enjoy that part. And so that's why I think I enjoy talking to you so much, because you always bring these other pieces and sides and pieces to the puzzle. I'm like, I didn't consider that, but it makes sense, you know?
Thank you.
But yeah, so
growing up the middle child.
Yeah, I was
shout out to the middle children.
Sometimes I wish I was the middle child, but that's neither here nor there. Any last thoughts overall, like what we talked about today?
No, it was good. I love that I love that it was left off like in full circle, where you're just like, well, perhaps that should be what's addressed. Like when you hold space for someone, it's not necessarily like, are you sure? Like that's a good, low key, that's a good way to get out of something. Did you ask God? You know? What was that? What was the conversation like? Not so much what was the conversation like, but just, you know, that's always a very, and honestly, when you use that, you can rush yourself from a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Like your friends come in and ask you stuff, you be like, ooh, girl, did you pray on that? Go pray on that. Like anything, you know? Ooh, you pray on that one.
I'm trying not to start another conversation. Maybe this will be a bonus, but part of people were upset. Well, not upset, but they were observing that Tia practices other spiritual things now and not Christianity. She hasn't directly said that she's not Christian anymore, that she doesn't believe in Christ anymore, that she doesn't try to follow Christ anymore, but she's done things over the past 3 years of her like embracing other spiritual practices of like crystals and burning sage. And on the show, one of her best friends booked a psychic to come to do a reading, and they had this ceremony of like they wanted her to burn her wedding dress and like to let go to Passover. She didn't want to do it. And she bought her this statue or something. It was a lot. Okay.
Sounds like it.
So apparently, I guess in past social media posts, she had shared that when her family comes over, she has to hide her crystals because all her family's Christian. And so people were talking about that and how like, yes, we've been on this, but I guess it was very new for people to find out because people don't follow her on social media, so they hadn't seen her in that light until the reality show where she kind of like showed it, and they had like this diverse party with the psychic and everything.
Interesting.
So for us, of course, it's just like, yes, we don't ask our peeps like, did you talk to God about it? Like, did you pray on it? You know, all the things. But in her situation, or even other people who may not have that lens or that religious connection or practice, it's just like, do you talk to Allah?
Well, like, that's a good question. And I think it's like, we're speaking from,
because I know for me, I'm addressing my God every
right
time, but it's just people like her in this situation. I'm just like,
for
I don't know.
my thinking is like, because even when you say that to, of course, like my friends in my circle, I know I know their walk. Mm-hmm. I like, not so much like I know their walk, but like, mm-hmm. I have an idea of the type of relationships that I have with my friends and the type of relationships that they have with God, right? In a sense of like how they do things, right? How we move, right? And so with that, when I say, did you seek God's counsel? They get that, right? Mm-hmm. And because we go to Bible study, like I know, I know how we rock. But when you're speaking, and even to like Christians out there, maybe like, when you like, not everybody, like when you make that comment, like, did you speak to God? I know people be like, well, God ain't talking to me. Like, what does that even look like? Yeah. In reality, what does that? And I'm sure there's a lot of folks who believe in God who probably have the same question. Like, what does that even mean? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what is that? I remember when I was young, and I was like in tears, and I was kind of like sharing. This is the first time I like shared something about my relationship, like with my mom. And I was really young. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, had you said something that made sense to where I was at in my age, I could have avoided all, like, this, a whole lot. But because I was like in high school, I feel like, I was in high school when I had this conversation with her. And literally she spoke from like her age and the version that she's at. She did not give it to me in layman's terms. She did not give it to me in baby crumbs. She just said, she was like, God will reveal what he wants you to reveal in time. And I'm like, child, I'm in high school. I'm like, what? Like, I just like sat with that, and I had to sit with that. And, hindsight, right? Years later, as I grew in stature and wisdom, I was like, ooh, God did reveal to me all the things that needed to be revealed in their time, right? In its time. And, mommy, could you not have told me that? Like, it's something, or put it where the goats can get it. Like, when I was little, you get what I'm saying? When I was younger. Yeah. So like, so to that point, when you say things like, what does that look like in practice to a new believer? Right? Did you seek counsel with God? What does that mean, and what does that even look like? So let's put that there, right? And then when it comes to people who, they're not necessarily Christians, or they just have their own spirituality beliefs and things like that, it's still an inner thing, right? Like, even I feel that from my perspective, even with dealing with, when I think of seeking wise counsel or seeking God's counsel, it's me sitting within myself, praying, meditating on scripture. It's still a self thing at the end of the day, right? It's self to a degree, because yes, and there's also wise counsel, right? Folks who are also walking the walk and talking the talk, right? Who are also believers and trusted advisors, folks that God had placed in your life as support systems that you can lean on, right? That could give you wisdom and sound advice, right? And therapy, right? Then there's a therapist, right? that you can go to. But with that, again, it's still like, again, that's sitting and being intentional with your thoughts, right? So even then that's transferable. Yeah. Right? That's so transferable. No matter. She can go to. I didn't say nothing about going to. No, I'm saying like how other people may perceive it. Nah. I'm saying sitting with self.
But her wise counsel may be her psychic.
Okay. I love that you put it there.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they might perceive that as like, this is how I apply it. from their spiritual.
From that, yeah, hey, that makes sense the way you gave it back to me. But definitely like self-work is big work, right? Like self-work is big. So like before anything else, you have to have conversations with yourself. Am I tripping? Is that just a me thing? Like, dude, okay, so like start there, right? And in the sense of what I mean by that too is like, again, seeking God with all your heart, all your mind. And I know that you're saying, okay, but outside of that, right? Again, what does that self work look like? Right? What is the conversation you're having with yourself? What's the mindset like? What are your thought patterns?
Yeah.
Right? And those are things that are very individual based, right? In that sense. Yeah. And then from there, I'm saying outside of, the Christian, right? Like self, and then from there, the wise counsel and all other things. I don't know if that even makes sense, but
I get you.
She said, so you saying white, like psychic?
No, I'm saying like,
but
that's
yeah,
how somebody might perceive it if you're trying to have this conversation with them.
Yeah.
And all I could do is like, I did my part, Lord.
Yeah.
And they could take from it and do with it as they please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even like offering to pray with them. Yeah, and
which people thankfully they're usually really receptive of prayer, even if they're not a believer.
Well, yeah, because they do everything. What's up? Anybody can get it. What do I got to do? Rub the belly, rub this, do this. Right. What I got to do? So, but yeah.
Well, I guess we're actually wrapping up now. There's so many layers to everything.
Therapy. Go to therapy. Like, be like, try that one first. But outside of
but yeah, so this has been a second episode. Thanks y'all for tuning in. Hopefully you resonated with something we spoke about. Hopefully something was a little gem that you can take away for yourself. Be sure to comment, rate us, and let us know in the comments how you felt about the conversation, your perspective on Tia Mowry and the different stances around divorce and how to navigate it and who to tell and how to receive support and all the things. Let us know in the comments how you feel. But yeah, so we're out of here. You want to say any last words?
Nah, good.
All right, well, yeah, thanks for listening. Bye, y'all.